This is Brian from ScreenFiles.com in review. What I'm looking at today is the first 6-episode season of Netflix's Spriggan, which is a new anime that debuted last week, I believe. And it's pretty good. The story revolves around a young man named Outweigh, who is a Spriggan, which is a warrior whose purpose is to defend this corporation called Arkham. And what Arkham does is they gather objects of power from a vanished civilization. If you want to simplify this, it's essentially Eric von Daniken's Chariot of the Gods, which is to say you have a superior, lost, advanced culture that has left relics. And oftentimes these relics are of immense power. And there are people who seek them. Arkham, which is the agency that Spriggan worked for, is one of these groups that seeks to possess these objects. And seemingly they're on the side of good. But the narrative begins to create doubts of that, though we never actually see it. And I enjoyed Spriggan. And once again, I can only praise the decision to have this first season consist of only 6 episodes. This is great because it allows you to invest in the world that the series is trying to create with minimal difficulty. You can binge it, in fact, over a day if that's your goal. So that's a great thing. The story, as I mentioned, is very much Eric von Daniken-esque. And that's okay for a cartoon. If you saw my video for the problem with the History Channel, I don't like it when actual people advocate this stuff. Because it's silly, it's stupid, and it wastes energy that could probably be better invested in studying, I don't know, anything else but that. So it's a problem for me. In terms of an anime, not so much. It works really well within the context of the story. And the story is very evocative of things you've seen before, if you've seen anime, but also if you've seen Raiders of the Lost Ark. There's one episode that's an homage to Raiders of the Lost Ark. Stolen is a bit strong, I don't believe that to be the case. But it does hit the same buttons and uses very much the same imagery as Raiders, so it works really well. Spriggan is very much hand-drawn animation. There are computer-aided effects, but there's also a lot of hand-drawn animation. It works really well, though the problem is the hand-drawn animation isn't always great. That's not quite fair. The hand-drawn animation is oftentimes very stylized, in the vein of Hellsing or Devil May Cry Crybaby, in that it's very exaggerated, and at least for me, it's not an animation style I tend to enjoy. I'm pretty sure it has its fans, though I don't happen to be one of them. As I mentioned earlier, Spriggan only consists of 6 episodes, so you have to be very exacting as you lay down how this character works. And that's not a lot of time to establish a lot of background for whomever is featured. And that works to the detriment of the story, in that Outweigh, visually speaking, is of indeterminate age. You have no idea of how old he is initially. And this works for the most part fine early on, though we come to learn that Outweigh is actually 16 years old. And later in the series, I want to say by maybe the 3rd episode, we start to see him in school and coping with that type of stuff. It doesn't really work. And a lot of that has to do with the animation style. It's kind of quirky, but it doesn't show age very well. Which is to say, unless you're an extremely old person, it's hard to know just by looking at them how old a person is. And so when I first started watching Spriggan, I assumed Amine was an adult because he was doing very adult things and tended to be around older people. Until the narrative switches direction and we see him among significantly younger people. It doesn't benefit the story at all. In fact, I would have preferred it if we didn't see him as a younger person, as in high school and that type of thing, at all. Or if we did, to have him actually look like a young man. He looks physically no different than any adult. But conversely, if you put him among his peers in school, he fits in there. It makes no sense. And this is all due to the animation. If the animation were more consistent, it would make this a lot more enjoyable. As it stands, Spriggan it's good. I didn't mind it at all, except for the quibbles I brought up earlier. It's well done. As I said, the CGI is minimal, though where it does appear, it's not typically obvious. There's one episode, I believe it's called Berserker. I want to say it's episode 5, maybe 4. In any case, in that episode, it's blatantly obvious. But for the most part, it isn't. And it works really well because it feels like a cartoon, as opposed to a cartoon with computer-aided assets in it. So that's cool. It's also worth mentioning that Spriggan is extremely violent at times. And this is another issue referring back to the age of the character in question. You is supposed to be 16 years old, yet he is extremely violent in certain situations. And again, that's fine, but have him look like the character he's supposed to be. Have him look like a 16-year-old. It would work better. I mentioned earlier that if the organization that you worked for were called Arkham, it would have been a much more clever thing. Somewhat connected it to the world of H.P. Lovecraft, which means that they could have done all sorts of interesting things. But, as I said, it's Arkham as opposed to Arkham, which is a missed opportunity. And it's confusing understanding how Arkham, the organization, works. In the sense that the story posits that Yue is simply a young man, a 16-year-old, who is wearing an enhanced suit made from reverse engineering some of the things they found from this ancient lost civilization. That's cool. But they introduce a character later on who moves incredibly fast, which is also cool because they don't tell you how he does it. You don't know what is behind his ability. It could be like you, which is to say his suit is enabling him to move at these incredible speeds. I don't think it is, but it's possible. But there's a part introduced where the same character, if he sees his own blood, he turns into a lycanthrope, a werewolf, in other words. And he has to kill anyone who's living. Well, he doesn't have to, but it's like a bloodlust type of thing. It makes no sense. How are they enlisting werewolves again? It's inconsistent like that. That's probably its greatest inconsistency that I can recall. But there are more. For instance, there's a character called Mirage who is able to move so quickly it's almost like he's standing still. And he says that anyone can reach this point through training. It's almost like One Punch Man. But One Punch Man is deliberately ludicrous. In the context of this, it just seems kind of silly. It's like Yu has this super advanced alien technology-based suit. Yet he cannot stand up to Mirage, who, as far as I can tell, just a normal guy. As I said, it's still enjoyable, though these niggling little inconsistencies story-wise is a bit irritating. Now what do you think? This is Brian with ScreenFiles.com and Review. Do you agree, disagree? Let me know down below. And as usual, consider a like or follow.